And now here's Jerry Hansen with today's edition of Panola Pride.
Good Thursday morning and welcome to Panola Pride, the heartbeat of East Texas. Our guest this morning, Mrs. LaGrone, and we're going to be talking about history in the East Texas area. A few announcements that we need to make. First of all, the Panola County Historical and Genealogical Association's regular meeting will be Monday, October the 4th, 7 p.m. at the library jail. So be sure. I would have to say library jail. You don't the old jail.
Oh, well,
Okay.
anyway,
They all know what it is.
Everybody
Okay.
knows by now.
Pardon me. A couple of class reunions coming up. The 61st class reunion of the class of 1932. Their reunion will be October the 9th. And the 50th reunion of the class of 1943, and that'll be October the 23rd. So mark your calendar, October the 4th for the genealogical meeting, October the 9th for the class reunion of 1932, and October the 23rd, the class reunion of 1943.
Don't tell me there are not things going on in Carthage.
A lot of things going on in Carthage and Panola County. Well, I see school books across the way.
Right, some old-fashioned school books. We've talked about schools, and we need to get on some other subjects, but this, a certain little lady came to my mind as I went through materials, and I thought it would be appropriate here on Homecoming Week in Carthage, and Beckville had their Homecoming Week last week, and we can think about what schools were like 100 years ago compared to today.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have homecomings 100 years ago, but they're having some now that will leave some historical records of the people that were here. And they're here now. We need to leave records for the future. So I thought we might, in comparison to the tests that we worry about today, what did they worry about in 1890?
They didn't have the Texas Assessment of Academic Skills.
No, they didn't have that. But they had these little country schools, and you would not believe how much they did in the time that they had to do it. The school terms were short, sometimes 3 months, sometimes even 2, in the various communities. But we also have the old school records that we're working on now. The county court needed the room in the courthouse and didn't have a place to store them, so they sent them down to us, and we didn't have a place to put them on display so they could be used until we have redone a room specially for them.
Mm-hmm.
And in going through all those school records, all of our librarians who are volunteering their hours to do this are learning things about what school was like in the early days in this county, how the schools were run and who had charge of them. And one of the things that they have asked me, what is this about the county judge having charge of the schools? And then we find another one where county superintendent. I says, that's the history of the schools. When the county was first founded in 1846, the beginning of the school systems, they had a few little private schools around, but the beginning of the school system all over the state was in the hands of the county court. The county judge was responsible. And so there was not such a thing as a county superintendent for over 50 years. The schools ran under the county court. So all of the earliest school records, what happened to this community and how was this school organized, have to be found in the court minutes of the county court. The county judge was the responsible one for taking care of the school systems. And then in 1907, the first county superintendent was elected.
Mm-hmm.
That was Mr. Holmes. And he had been teaching in the county, and he was elected, excuse me, as county superintendent when there were about, I think, 20, maybe 19 or 20 rural schools in the county. And there were no independent school districts. Actually, villages like Carthage had its own school, but it was still under the county at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mr. Holmes was such an educator for his day that he held that office 5 years. And these are some things that happened in that 5 years that are unbelievable, and we have the records on them. He doubled the number. He was in charge of organizing new schools. And he made it so popular that the communities began to donate land for community schools. And the state, by this time, had some money, taxes, that was channeled back. See, we've talked about that we had land grants for schools in each county. Well, the funds that came back to Panola County were good for some education, but not a full term. Didn't have that much money. And we won't go into that today, but it's real interesting to see that the early teachers taught for about 10 cents a day per pupil. And that was all the money they got. But when Mr. Holmes was the superintendent of the county, he started getting interest aroused in the communities that didn't have schools for the children. And if they didn't have a community school, there's no way for the kids to go to school. So he doubled the number of schools, and after the 5 years that he had held the county office, there were 40-some rural schools, or county schools. Mm-hmm. And by that time, Carthage had grown to the extent that they had, in a fashion, an independent school district. And they hired him as superintendent of Carthage schools, so he resigned as county superintendent and became superintendent of Carthage schools. And in that 5 years, he had already set up the beginning of grades. There had been no grades. You went to school and you studied as far as you could in this book this year, and next year you picked up on that page and went a little further. And that's what these books are all about. The basic book that they studied was the Blueback Speller. And if you hear old-timers talk about it, they'll talk about the Blueback Speller. Well, this, you see these words? This is an elementary, it's called. But that's all they had in the rural schools. It went on through teenage years. But you see, these are not very easy words. And not only did they learn to spell them, they learned what they meant, how the different ways it could be used, and this became sort of the textbook for everything. They wrote things using the words. They spelled the words. See, they started out with simpler words, and they studied from the viewpoint of phonics, the sound of the word. And this little lady that inspired me to do a little study on this was Mrs. Sudie Chamness Bowen over in the Harris Chapel area. She had grown up close to Old Harmony Hill, which is over by Tatum, you know. Mm-hmm. And that's where she'd gone to school as a child. And she got to be an expert speller. Now, in the early schools, Friday afternoons were community gathering time. There was some kind of program on, and it usually was a spelling match. And they'd choose up sides, and all the parents would come and cheer for the spellers. And Sudie was an expert speller, and she wrote a letter. And this letter is what got me on to what she had done. She wrote a letter when she was 91 years old. She was born in 1856. And she wrote a letter in 43. Now, I think I'm right on my dates. And it was to her son, telling him what school was like in her day. Mm-hmm. And this was, you know, an eye-opener. And she told about one of the most joyous days of her life when she was in a spelling match. They were called spelling matches at Beckville. And when they chose up sides, she was on the opposite side from a teenage boy that had the name of being the best speller in Panola County. And she said to herself, well, this is it. if he spells me down, I'm a goner. And she said, of course, the one who gave out the words gave them out from this book, starting out with easy ones and going on to harder words, of course, as he went along. And they went, and everybody, I don't know if you ever participated in a spelling match or not. In my day, they still had them. And it would be a contest, just like a ball game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it would be boosters for each side pulling for their kids, you know. Okay, and they would include kids all the way up and down the school. I mean, there'd be beginning spellers, and he'd give out easier words, and then older ones would get harder words. Anyway, one by one, they went down until finally the two were standing, Sudie and her opponent. And, of course, her heart was beating out of her chest almost. And finally the man gave a word that he missed, and she spelled. So she became the champion speller of Panola County. And she said at age 91 it was still one of the most joyous days of her life. Well, this was the important element of education, was to know words, what they meant, how they spelled them. Now then, today, we have word processors. I even have a typewriter that beeps if I misspell a word. It doesn't tell me how to spell it, but it tells me go look it up. Well, my mother, now Miss Sudie was born in 1856. My mother was born in 1872, and spelling was still it. As long as my mother lived, she could spell anything she could say. If she could pronounce a word, she could spell it, because the sound spelled it for her. Well, I have seen us go in circles in education. We forgot about word sounds, and we got a generation of poor spellers. And then we went back to phonics. We're back doing some phonics now, getting the sound of the word in mind. And, of course, they went further than just the sound and spelling of the word. They wrote papers. This was a textbook for everything. And this little book was used as the main textbook for over 50 years. And it was used not just as beginners, as the little words are, but it taught language, it taught grammar, it taught everything with the English language. And they went page by page, column by column. And in the first year of school, it wasn't a grade, it was how far you are in the blueback speller. And next year, where did you get to? This book was yours because it had to be bought. There were no free textbooks. In fact, I was already in school as a little kid before we got free textbooks. I remember when we got them. The first textbooks I had were bought, primers and first readers.
Mm-hmm.
Those were purchased and belonged to the family. And they passed down in the children of the family. See, if my older brother would have the book, and I learned the whole book while he had it, because he'd have it at home and he'd be doing his reading and so on. And we talked about that in the last years of his life, how much the one next to us learned while that one was doing his homework and his study, because there were not a lot of other things to do, so we did that. Well, that was education 100 years ago. How do we compare with it today? Well, let's name some other things. Some other things they studied was McGuffey's Reader. This is the fifth reader. That does not mean it was the fifth grade. This was the fifth in a series of readers. Mm-hmm. And it depended on how long you got to go to school as to how far you'd get. But again, this was a textbook for more than 50 years. And people all over, not just Texas, all over, these two books were all over the United States. The Blueback Speller and McGuffey's Readers.
I'm just noticing the phonics underneath the word.
Yes, they're all marked all the way through. These words are all marked in syllables. That's the reason they could handle the words so well. Of course, we have a lot of other things in education now that they didn't have, but they had some things we didn't have, and I sometimes am concerned over the fact that we might have thrown out some things that we ought to go back and take a look at. For instance, all of these stories and all of they're in this little spelling book. There are legends, and everyone has a moral. We don't dare use stories with morals now. Morals are not important. And I'm not sure that we did the right thing to say they're not important, because we have some people that can't distinguish between right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere they have to learn that. And education needs a part of that. So all of these things, the main aim was to teach right and wrong, good and bad, evil and good. And everything had a story, but it had a meaning. And so these were used all over the country. And Mr. Holmes, and he was followed as a county superintendent by Mr. Beeson, who had been teaching in Beckville, and he became the county superintendent. And then we had a series of superintendents. I didn't finish that story. The schools started out under the court. Then a state superintendent was elected, and a woman was the first one. Dr. Annie Webb Blanton was the first state superintendent of education, and she was elected in the early 1920s, right after women got a vote. And from then on, we had a state superintendent, and in every county had a county superintendent. Each one was responsible to the next level. Okay, under the county superintendent then, those who wanted to teach had to take examination and get a certificate. Now, the examination was prepared by the state board under the state superintendent. And that examination, well, there were several levels of examination. If somebody wanted to teach, finished local school, and wanted to get a teacher's certificate, he or she would have to pass the examination, the test. And it was given every 3 months or every 6 months or whatever in the county. And if she were just going to teach in the elementary grades, it would be a certain one. If she wanted to teach all the way through outside the county, anywhere in the state, then it was a more difficult examination. So we have records of some of those too. And Carthage schools set up an extra year for would-be teachers. It was called Institute. And when they finished the school here, and this went on for 25 years or more, college was not required, but a certificate was. And they had to study to pass that test. So the extra year that was offered, it was certain courses that were going to be on that examination, and they would go that extra year, take those courses, pass the exam, get a certificate. If they passed that advanced exam, they could teach anywhere in Texas. And then most of the teachers in those early teachers then began going to normal school and so on and building on a college education. But it took years doing a little bit and a little bit to get degrees then. Okay. This went on until the period of putting schools together and making big schools instead of little country schools. Mm-hmm. And this came mainly in the 1940s. And after the schools had voted to unify in a bigger school district so they could offer more things to the students, because times were a-changing. Mm-hmm. And things did need to be added that you could not have if you had 20 pupils in a school. but you could have them if you had 120 pupils in a school.
Right.
So we had only a few independent school districts then that began to develop, and the rural schools began to join in, you see, and vote to have less in number but more in quality. And again, we didn't need a county superintendent because the school property was all independent school property. And so we have no county superintendent now. The school, anything dealing with education countywide is under the judge again, under his court. So we've gone around the circle, and all of the education part now is done by independent school districts, you see. Well, I wanted to say one thing, and we've run out of time. This is the history book. This history book was published 100 years ago, and it's Pennybacker's history. An elderly gentleman was walking by my house one morning, and I was on the porch, and he asked me, did I ever have a Pennybacker history? I said, yes, sir. He says, I wish I had one. Well, if I'd have had a handful, I might have given him one.
Right.
He says, I wish I had one. Says, I remember so many things in it that I'd love to read again. But this is amazing what they had together, and this was first published in the 1890s. And my history that's going to be published in 1994 on the regulator-moderator war uses a map that they had in this because it shows the neutral ground.
Right.
Better than any other map I've found anywhere. And they have all of the early days of Texas spelled out in terms that students could understand. And Dr. Pennybacker died just after they published the first edition of this. And Anna continued it for 25 years. And this was the history textbook of Texas.
I'll declare.
And it is still a treasure. This one was one of her later ones, but it's exactly a reprint of the originals. This is the 1924 edition, but they started printing them in 1895. Well, they knew that history back and forth, this Texas history of the early days, up till that time, the governors and everything else. So what they had, they mastered. They just didn't have a whole lot of resources like we have today. Now, what would I do if I were a teenager starting today? I wanted to end with that. If I were a teenager today going to college, I would make up my mind early to take all the training I could that qualified me to feed the data to the computers. Those computer chips have to be done by somebody. And if a keen mind does not do them, the computer gets the wrong fact. It can't reason. Smart as it is, it can't reason. And when it makes a mistake, you can't get it corrected for the rest of your life. So the mind still has to do it. And I say, young people, go for it and get yourself qualified to be the one that says what goes in it. Because there'll be some wrong data in it if somebody doesn't do that.
Good advice. Thank you. I'm always amazed. I'm all fired up. I guarantee, as you're saying, the computer is only as smart as the one putting the information in.
Right, and somebody has to put that information in. And if we get people that have no morals and have wrong information and put it in there, and we accept it, then we're off beam.
Reminding you of some reunions coming up, the class of 1932, and that's on October the 9th. Reunion of the class of 1943 is on October the 23rd. And the regular meeting of the Panola County Historical and Genealogical Association, October the 4th at 7 p.m. at the Genealogical Library. Ms. LeGrone, thank you.
And we will be open for everybody to visit us during the festival on the square.
Tex Ritter Roundup coming up the 17th and 18th.
Yes, it's right on us.
Downtown Carthage, we invite everybody.
Right.
Thank our listening and viewing audience for being with us today. Remind you that the High Sheriff of Panola County will be our guest tomorrow at this same time. So join us. Until then, have a great day.
KGAS FM 104.3.
Good morning, and it's time for the County Fair Grapevine again this good fall morning, and we're glad you're listening. Here we are, September 29th, right at the end of the month, and we hope you have a good day. We hope it's a good day for you. We can count our blessings and be, of course, concerned about our responsibilities. One for every Christian, I believe, is to pray for our nation and our leaders. You know, we have to have change sometimes. We know that. My husband says, if change depend on me, we'd probably still be driving the horse and buggy. And I say, well, think about it. Would that be too bad? But anyway, we do have to have change with the times. But changes are not always good for the people in regard to justice, freedom, and the moral fiber of our country. And that's what concerns me. You know, it's interesting to look back over the past 30 years. I challenge him to do that. And if you're that old, many of you aren't old enough to look back over 30 years, but just make a list of the changes that has been made by our government and Supreme Court that has really enriched our lives, and those that have not, that perhaps our life is not as good. You know, changes are easy to make.
View, where they have fix-it-up mobile homes that can be purchased for as low as $1,500 with financing available. For over 20 years, Superior Homes has provided comfortable, affordable housing throughout East Texas. Whether new or refurbished, you will find superior buys at Superior Homes in Longview.
And now it's time for Panola Pride with your host, Jerry Hansen.
Good Thursday morning and welcome to another edition of Panola Pride, the heartbeat of East Texas. It's History Lesson Day again, and Mrs. LeGrone is with us, and we're glad that our listening and viewing audience is with us as well. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning.
I see a little announcement that we need to make. The Old Jail Museum and the LeGrone Family Historical Center will be open for free tours. How about that? During the Tex Ritter Roundup, and that's coming up not this weekend but next weekend.
Yes, that's
It's right here on us, is it not?
Yes, we'll be there to host people through to see what we have, and we're proud of it. And they've all helped us do it, so we want them to see it if they're interested.
Very good. And that will be both Saturday and Sunday?
Yes, we'll be there both days.
All righty. Interesting program that you have with maps and all today.
Well, we had a gift this week of a map, and I couldn't bring it because it's kind of large, and it's a real treasure. Dr. Parker, John Parker, who is the grandson of Miss Jabe Parker, who had the big White House across where the Central Baptist Family Center is now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, her grandson is a doctor in Plano. Mm-hmm. And he has come several times to study in our library. Well, he's interested in maps, and I am too. I'm a map bug. I feel like if I can see a picture of what I'm talking about, I can understand it better. So we're accumulating old maps, and I hope that anybody that has some old maps that they don't care about anymore will give us a chance to look them over, because we're building a file of early maps that show places and events that aren't on maps today, and that would help us with research. But this map that Dr.